I'm back with another video. This video is going to be about Manchester City versus Chelsea in the FA Cup semi-finals today. And before we start, my book has been released. It's on Amazon, paperback and Kindle version, so be sure to check that out. And be sure to check out the membership option below in the description. Both links are in the description. And the members all get a free copy of the book as well as other exclusive content. And finally, check out Keyframe. It's how I make the second half of this video. All the links are in the description below, so some cool things to check out, but let's get right into it. So Manchester City, when they would build from the back, Chelsea didn't use their high block very often, but Laporte and Diaz would be alongside Steffen with Mendy and Cancelo holding the width, and that was the big tactical change from the Manchester City team, was the fullbacks creating the width within the team, and Rodri, Fernandinho, the double pivot. So no more inverted fullbacks for this game. And then Kevin De Bruyne, Sterling would then be occupying the half space, at least for the first half. Chelsea went with their 5-3-2, and instead of their 5-2-3, Conte got the start today, so he played a little bit higher. And one thing that stood out was the narrow shape of their three midfielders compared to their two forwards, and this gave them closer proximity to the two holding midfielders, as well as using their cover shadow to block passes between the lines into the half spaces, while still having adequate pressure on the two City central defenders. So as we move forward, we can see Torres and Jesus were the two most central highest players, especially in their first third of build-up. When Chelsea would go and press City, Timo Werner would go, and then now the flexibility from the back five would see Chilwell jump, and with the midfield three sliding over, of course. So now moving into the midfield third, we have Laporte on the ball. Diaz usually staggered themselves as well as the two holding midfielders. Sometimes they would fade into the half spaces as well as the two central defenders. Then deeper, Chelsea became more of a 5-4-1, but with advanced wide midfielders. Conte joined Jorginho as the two holding midfielders, as he did in possession as well. When Chelsea maintained possession, Jorginho and Conte with a double pivot, and when City would press in their 4-2-3-1, some of the space arrives between the lines, with Fernandinho being drawn to the Chelsea double pivot or Rodri on the vice versa side. Now, City, out of possession at times, used a 4-1-4-1, very sparingly though, and this occurred when Rodri would be drawn towards Conte or Jorginho in their double pivot, and what this would do, it would create opportunity for Chelsea through the half space advance because of the lack of width they had in the holding midfield position from City, because Rodri would jump, but it also gave them more access to the first two lines. So this often wasn't utilized by Chelsea, but was still there. So more often than not, we saw the double pivot of Manchester City, Rodri and Fernandinho alongside of each other, with Torres, Sterling as the wide midfielders, with Kevin De Bruyne, but changed for Phil Foden and Gabriel Jesus through the middle to block off entry passes. And even though City controlled the ball in terms of possession, Chelsea had the better opportunities and were more effective with it. So now let's get into the keyframe aspect of the video. Now we'll look at some in-game examples of Manchester City and Chelsea in and out of possession. So when Manchester City were in possession, the width again was created by their fullbacks, Mendy and João Cancelo, two central defenders, and the weak side fullback usually inverted just slightly on a deeper line to create an asymmetric back four to stagger them throughout the central and wide corridors. And now with the double pivot of Fernandinho and Rodri, they would then connect the first and second line of their build-up structure to the advanced area, trying to create a more cohesive offensive structure that's ready for transition as well as aiding progression. Now we see the Chelsea side. We have our two highest players, Ziyech and Timo Werner. We have our midfield three with Jorginho at the pivot and Conte just slightly higher. And Conte is positioning himself between Manchester City players to then create dual access while Ziyech is using his cover shadow to block Rodri, the priority then becomes Sterling between the lines. And from here, this narrow 3-2 shape made it very hard for City to build through their central midfielders or even get access to the half spaces. When Chelsea were in possession, they went with their back three as they have done this whole time under Thomas Tuchel, their double pivot of Conte and Jorginho, and between the lines in the half space was Mason Mount and Hakim Ziyech. Now these players often found space in situations like this when they would start higher up the field and Manchester City would go and press. So we have our wide midfielders and our holding midfielders. For Manchester City here, we can see Gabriel Jesus is a little bit out of position, but that's all right. We can still get our point across. So we have our shape lined up here, and to make it a little more clear, we can even show the space that would then be created between the lines when Manchester City would go and press to then go for Chelsea to then be created between the lines. So when Manchester City would press and their players would be drawn forward, sometimes a player like Fernandinho, the holding midfielder, would be drawn more towards Conte and the holding midfielders, and this would then free up space for a player like Mason Mount between the lines as their attention is drawn further forward rather than in their blind spots between Ziyech and Mount. And we can even see Ziyech on the weak side having this opportunity in the blind side of Rodri, and Rodri jumping just to the double pivot, thus creating space between the lines for Rodri. The width was held by Reece James and Ben Chilwell. Another concept Manchester City used in possession with their double pivot and two central defenders is they often staggered these two players in the first and second line of build-up. So Fernandinho would then go in the half space, Rodri would hold the middle between two Chelsea players, and the width again being created by Cancelo. So what this would do, it would create slight diagonal passing options, aiding a little bit more ball circulation, and with Mendy coming more narrow, it would give more of a 2-3 rest defense shape and circulation shape, as we see here, how we make up our 2-3. And in the wide areas, when we see Cancelo holding the width, we can see the mutual help space and the overloaded half space working together to try and create more advanced options. And in the second half, they became much more effective in getting forward and retaining possession in more dangerous areas. Although they didn't create many dangerous chances throughout the match, their opportunities were there in the second half to get into these dangerous areas and make something happen. And from Chelsea, we can see then as we move deeper, we create more of a 5-4-1 or 5-2-3 with the holding midfielders blocking off any advanced area passing options. So that's the analysis, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.